right, this is my video discussion for the week 15, the discussion about bias and subjectivities and reflexivities and representation. So the first question that we were supposed to answer deals with the distinctions between bias and subjectivity. We learned in the Bhattacharya text that she states that bias is usually associated with quantitative studies where researchers are worried about sampling bias and several other types of bias that are meant to be handled in a quantitative study. And the qualitative studies are usually deal with subjectivities because qualitative studies deal with interviews and making reality or making the world make sense, constructivism, things like that. It's also a connotation thing. Usually bias is something to be avoided. It's got a negative connotation. It's something that we're supposed to pull out of our research or that we're supposed to take care of in a research study. Subjectivity has a less negative connotation. It's not positive, although it can be after reading the Rolson and Shelton and the different types of research analysis and things that we've been dealing with in the past few weeks. It can be positive because subjectivities can lead to deeper analyses of data. They can also help researchers to create believability or realism in their writing. The handling of bias, as I said, is something systematic or procedural in a quantitative study, where subjectivities handling those in qualitative studies is more written and reflexive. The second part of our discussion dealt with how a researcher's engagement with subjectivities can actually enhance the quality of a research study. And I think that successfully handling subjectivities can lead to validity and a reduction of bias, a reduction of that negative connotation in a qualitative study. Bhattacharya states that not engaging with the subjectivities in the actual study itself or in the research paper or the dissertation is a flaw. By ignoring them or not dealing with them directly, it can lead to critics and readers seeing flaws and not understanding why they weren't dealt with. Rolson and Shelton's article discussed the idea that a study would be of better quality because qualitative researchers who successfully address their subjectivities, usually by using the theoretical frameworks, the paradigms, their epistemological or ontological assumptions as support for handling the data and the analysis, those can all create a very successful qualitative study. It can create a process or an analysis that is more believable, that is that projects the reality of the researcher's engagement with the data and what that researcher found. And so they also present that the research should support the researchers should support evidence that that the subjectivities should be embraced and addressed throughout the study. And I found it interesting that both Rolson and Shelton and Basily both talked about using theoretical frameworks as a support for addressing their subjectivities throughout their research in all parts, whether it's methodology or data collection or analysis. Rolson and Shelton also present the ideas that researchers should use these reflexive practices to focus on examining one's subjectivities in order to describe how they affect the research. And that's where the heart or the meat of the matter sits, is really describing how the subjectivities that you've encountered in research affect the results of the research, whether it affected the data collection process itself or that it affected the analysis or discussion parts of your research. This would enhance the quality by addressing any perceived issues of bias, as a critic may read. Then you work on to Basily. She discussed the practices that researchers can use while analyzing data that can make subjectivities and biases clear to the readers and to the critics. So by addressing them and making them clear, it then reduces the impact of those biases or those subjectivities. She also stresses using the literature surrounding the theoretical framework to support the methodology and to support their analysis. So again, she refers back to really relying on that theoretical framework, which needs to be rock solid in order for your data analysis and your conclusions to be accurate. By referring back to the framework and tying it into the analysis, researchers can address any subjectivity. She presented some ideas about how reflective writing can also help a researcher expose assumptions, and can also help tie the data together to create deeper analysis. And the deeper that analysis goes and the more it uses the data, I think that helps reduce the subjectivities and can help make that research more credible and reliable. So that is the end of my presentation. Enjoy.